Okay, sorry. This is a continuation of the end of 16, and hopefully we'll get into 17, 18. I'm so sorry. There's just so much. Okay, anyway. So we're talking about Ishmael, and his name means the God who hears, the God that God hears. And so God heard her in the desert, and she was felt so alone, and God heard her. And we see a prophecy of Ishmael where he's going to be a wild donkey of a man, and that his hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand will be against him, and he shall dwell over against all his kinsmen. This is foreshadowing of what we deal with now. So in the coming chapters, we'll see the birth of Isaac. Israel, Esau and Jacob come from him. Jacob is renamed to Israel, and that's where we get the nation of Israel. And so we see Ishmael, he's representative, like the Arab people and Islam come from him, and where Muhammad comes from. And so if you really know history, I don't know a whole lot about it, but like I'm thinking like Iran and all of those nations that follow Islam are always against the Jewish people, and everyone else's hands against them too, because they go for Israel, right? Like they are for God, and the communities that support Israel, they are against. So we are seeing that today. I remember last year whenever I learned that, I was like, we're living in Bible times. Like, it was such an awakening for me. Okay, and so now we get to 17, and where Abraham begins initiating God tells him that this is the covenant of circumcision, and this is going to be what sets them apart from other nations, from other peoples. And circumcision is not only a physical symbol, like a physical in nature thing that happens, but it's also for spiritual and symbolic in nature. Obviously the physical part of it sets them apart, right? Like you would be able to tell them apart. And what it did is it symbolized the cutting away of something. And we see in the New Testament with Jesus that it's transformed. Rather than being a physical circumcision, it's a circumcision of the heart. It's a cutting away of those things that make us our sin nature. And the symbolism with I didn't understand why there was only something that happened to a man, right? Like there was nothing for a woman to symbolize. Well, in those days, in the cultural context of things, the men were the head of the household. And so by him being circumcised, everybody within who fell underneath his leadership was covered by that covenant. And so I thought there's a beauty in that too, right? Like I feel like there's almost a protection in that as well. And so like we as a Western civilization in Christianity, we don't really understand the significance of that. And because Jesus is that circumcision for us, this is kind of a foreign concept to us. And then we move on to Isaac being born, and how his name means laugh. He laughs. Both Abraham laughed and Sarah laughed. They just did not understand. Look, I'm so old. I think he was like 99, maybe. I might be wrong about that, but Sarah was like 90, way beyond childbearing years, and they were it just shows even more of where they just didn't believe, because in the natural it could never happen, but God made it happen, right? Like we see him showing up and showing out in all these different ways. And then we move to chapter 18. And in chapter 18, it's kind of a continuation of the prophecy of Isaac. And so we see 3 men come to him, and immediately he knows who they are. And then he bowed himself to the earth in their presence. And so he sets out and he wants to give them, feed them, and give them the best of what they have. And then they say to him in verse 9, where is Sarah? Where is Sarah, your wife? And he said, she's in the tent. As surely as I return to you in about this time next year, Sarah, your wife, shall have a son. And he laughed. Both of them just did not get it. But this time next year, and it said she would be pregnant. And then in 15 it says, but Sarah denied it, saying, I did not laugh, talking about, she's like, I didn't laugh. Who are you talking about? Me? No, I didn't. She was scared that they were going to kill her, probably. He said, no, but you did laugh. I just think that's so funny when you see a little bit of sass happen. And now, so the prophecy of Isaac, right? We see that's going to happen. And then we see Abram interceding for Sodom, and how they were going to go. Was it 2 men? Nope, it was the same men. Sorry, I had to look. It says, then the men sent out from there in verse 16. Then the men sent out from there, and they looked down toward Sodom. And Abraham went with them to set them on their way. The Lord said, shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do, seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. For I have chosen him that he may command his children. And so then in verse 20, then the Lord said, because of the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and their sin is very grave, I will go down to see whether they have done what they have done altogether according to the outcry that I've heard. And here we see Abraham interceding for them. He starts out, Lord, if there were 50 righteous people, would you really burn it down? And the Lord's like, no, if I find 50 righteous people, I will not burn it down. And then Abraham gets to thinking, well, I know Sodom and Gomorrah, and what about 45? Like, he just keeps going down. Like, God didn't say anything. God's like, okay, if I can find 50. But then I think he got worried and was kind of like, oh, you know what? There may not be 50. So let's see. And then he puts it down, and he negotiates all the way down to 10. He's like, surely, in his mind, surely there'll be 10 righteous people in there. And God is kind of like, okay. But how amazing is that God is humoring him? He already knows. He already knows that there's not any righteous man besides Lot in there. And that he was going to have to do away with Sodom anyway. Okay, so that ends our day 17. And I will come back with another video going through, is it 19 through 21? And we will see what happens to Lot. This next little bit gets really hard. And it just shows how wicked that city was, and how much it infiltrates him and his family. So I hope you come back to my next video. I'm sorry these are so long, but there's just so much in there, and I hate to not cover any of it. So if you have stuck around this long, give me a like, and comment something that really stood out to you. There's so much in here. This historical narrative is so amazing to me, and how far God has come for us. So I'll see you tomorrow.